It was a cold, dark night, typical of October, when Mike and Dave found themselves in a dead-end bar. Life has been tough for them. Mike, a young man of 22, had recently lost his job and was about to be evicted from his small apartment. Dave, his childhood friend, was also in a tough situation, trying to support his mother with temporary jobs that didn't pay enough. Desperate for a solution, we sat on a bench in the square, thinking what we could do to make their lives better. It was then that Dave, with a gleam flooding our eyes, laughed at an old urban look he had as a child. The story tells of a burial mound in the local cemetery, where a very rich man was buried with his treasures. Shall we steal the burial mound? Dave suggested, initially as a pity, but they both sensed that, as it may seem, this might be their only way out. On the way to the cemetery, the tension was palpable. The cold wind cut through their donuts, and the scrutiny seemed to envelop everything around. Every being, every shadow, seemed to amplify the mind in their hearts. When we reached the cemetery, the look was even more sinister. The iron gate ran towards the opening, and the place was plunged into an eerie silence, broken only by the rustling of leaves. The moon shone brightly, illuminating a burial mound that seemed to belong to something of great importance. The mound was adorned with beautiful sculptures of angels and marble flowers, and had a heavy feeling in the air, as if the cemetery itself was watching them. With shaking hands and pounding hearts, Mike and Dave began to dig. The work was hard and laborious. The earth seemed heavier with each step. Each one roared, stopped, and had a pain in their faces, fearing to be sticky. After exhausting hours of work, we will find a buried metal box. As we open it, his eyes shine at the sight of them, ancient coins and other valuable items. He has rings encrusted with precious stones, gold and silver necklaces, and coins that seem to be centuries old. With a shock of relief and excitement, we will glue everything we can and leave the cemetery, believing that his troubles are over. Little did we know that the real adventure was just beginning. That same night, while we are returning home, we begin to hear his disturbing whispers that seem to come through nowhere. At first we thought it was just the wind, but the whispers will continue, getting louder and clearer. "You have made a big mistake," was what we seemed to say. With each step, the feeling of being watched intensified. Shadows begin to move at the corners of his eyes, disappearing when we try to look directly. Mike, upon arriving home, tries to ignore the strange events. It was on television and I wanted to distract myself, but the whispers continued. When I heard a loud gossip in the kitchen, with my heart in my mouth, I put on a face and checked it out. When I arrived, I found all the cupboards open and objects hollowed out by water. My first reason was to call Dave, but he was busy dealing with his own terrifying experiences. Dave, upon entering your apartment, felt a shadowy presence. As we turned on the lights, we saw shadows moving quickly along the walls, as if we were trying to escape the light. I felt a rush coming up the spike and, with a growing sense of panic, you tried to connect with Mike, but the phone was silent. Then I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway, getting closer and closer. In the following days, the situation was very complicated. The nights became a torment, with gusts of wind on the walls, doors slamming and voices muttering threats. Mike and Dave were unable to sleep, and when they were asleep, they were tormented by the weight of the living being dragged down an endless abyss. Desperate and not knowing what to do, we decided to return the stolen items, hoping that this would calm the shadows. We returned to the cemetery. It was very cold and rainy. They put everything back in the tomb, apologizing loudly. But for your wish, nothing is lost. The shadows continue, growing ever more intense and disturbing. That's when I decided to seek help. We went to the local church and told everything to the Father, a man adored by the eyes of men, but who will overshadow him when they hear the story. He explains that the tomb they had stolen belonged to an ancient warrior who would swear to protect his belongings until death. And now his soul was troubled and furious. The Father prepared an exorcism ceremony and went with them to the cemetery. When they arrived, The moon shining in the sky was high, illuminating the sinister tomb. The wind blew hard, and it seemed as if the cemetery itself was alive, watching their every move. The father began to pray, sprinkling holy water and reciting ancient words of protection. Like shadows around us, we seemed to shake, as if we were trying to resist. Suddenly, a strong wind began to blow, and whispers gathered louder and more desperate. The shadows grew more intense, forming grotesque figures surrounding Mike and Dave. "O Father," with unfailing faith, he continued to pray, and slowly, as the shadows began to dissipate, the whispers became less and less until they ceased altogether. When everything finally calmed down, Father said one last prayer, asking for peace for the restless soul. Mike and Dave, happy holidays. Thank you, Father. We promise never again to get mixed up with things we don't understand and to go about our lives with a new appreciation for respect and peace. The events of that night left a deep mark on us, teaching us that some things are better than described in paragraphs, and that sometimes the pursuit of fast forward can bring terrible and unexpected consequences. And so Mike and Dave learned the hard way that some things must be left alone, and that sometimes curiosity and game can lead to terrifying and uncontrollable situations. They will live the rest of their lives with a new appreciation for peace and respect for the dead, always remembering the night we defied each other and nearly lost everything. I hope you liked the story, because the second story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. It was a full moon night and Lisa's family was excited about a new project. They have a beautiful garden in front of the house, but they want to do something special. We decided to create a memorial garden to honor Grandpa Joe. To do this, we would need to move the grave to a nicer, more serene place. It seemed like a harmless idea and I called love. The first night after the move, Lisa was deserted in her bed, looking up at the moon that was through Janela. Everything was quiet, until the light from the abajur on the side of the bed began to flicker. There must be an electrical problem, she thought, trying not to worry. But then I heard a high-pitched noise from the door of her room. She looks at the door, but no one else is there. In the next few days, strange things will begin to happen. The lights in the house would shine for no reason, and the doors would open as if someone was passing through them, even when we were alone. But the most helpful was the one weighing them. Lisa began to smile at her boyfriend Joe. Our children. He was always standing by the barrow, looking at it with accusing eyes. "Why are you disturbing me?" he whispered, and Lisa could feel anger and sadness in his voice. Each night, the sounds grew louder. Lisa listened coldly, her heart pounding. During the day, she could hear his whispers, as if plain Joe was trying to talk to her. And whenever she passed by the old barrow location, a chill ran down her spine. The family began to sense that something was very wrong. Lisa's father, worried, called an electrician to check the lights, but found nothing wrong. Lisa's mother thought they were all stressed because of the barrow moving. But Lisa knew there was something else. She could feel dear Joe's presence and knew he was not happy. One night, Lisa decided to confront her husband. She was in the garden, where great-great-great-great Joe's new barrow was placed. The moon illuminated the place, creating sustaining shadows. With a flashlight in her hand, Lisa walked up to the mound and Peru. "Well," said Joe, she whispered, "if you are here, please forgive us. We did not want to disturb you. We wanted to honor you." Suddenly, a cold wind blew, causing the leaves on the trees to sway red. Lisa felt a pang of regret, but did not take it back. "We will find a time to resolve this," she promised. At some point, the flashlight flickered one last time before going out. Lisa ran back home, telling her country what she had heard. We decided to seek help from a paranormal specialist. The specialist went home and performed a ritual to appease the spirit of the great Joe. He explained that moving a mound can disturb the dead, and that we would necessarily ask for forgiveness and make an offering. The family followed all the specialist's instructions. In the memorial garden, we will place fresh flowers, a photo of Grandpa Joe, and light candles in his memory. We ask for a prayer, asking for peace for his spirit. After the ritual, things begin to look up. The lights stop flickering, and the doors no longer scratch at ears. Lisa no longer has to weigh them down, and the cold feeling near the ancient burial mound disappears. The family felt that Lucky Joe was finally at peace. Still, Lisa never shied away from the experience. She teaches that the dead deserve respect and that some actions, however well-intentioned, can have unexpected consequences. And whenever she looked out at the memorial garden, she was reminded of St. Joe and the power of spirits that live beyond our understanding. I hope you liked the story, because the third story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. I hope you liked the story. A large city shrouded in perennial snowfall, the Casa das Sombras, Shadow House, stood majestically, an enigmatic wooden construction whose imposing presence dominated the local skyline. The house has a history rich in mystery and shadows, where the long, narrow corridors seem to murmur secrets of the past whenever a night breeze passed through them, causing the ancient planks to lengthen as they lament the wait of 2 years. The local residents avoided talking about the house in detail, but everyone knew the stories that surrounded it. I mean, the house was the scene of strange and inexplicable events over the centuries. Stories of apparitions and unexplained noises ran through the streets, feeding the minds and curiosity of the residents. The children of the neighborhood, especially Lucas and Clara, inseparable siblings who shared a room on the second floor, were particularly fascinated by the House of Shadows. For them, the house was like a mysterious soul, an enigma to be unraveled. At night, under the light of the roar of their shared room, they whispered stories of ghosts and apparitions, challenging one to explore further the secrets of the old house. Clara, newer and more sensitive, often felt a rush at the tip of the needle as she passed through the dark street in front of the house. She had seen shadows moving in the windows, as if something or someone was watching. Lucas, a little more courageous and determined to prove it was nothing, frequently led nighttime expeditions to the house's stalled gates, looking for a window that might be open or a clue that would lead them closer to the mystery. One cold autumn night, when the moon cast a pale light over the sleeping city, she discovered something extraordinary. Clara was startled by a subtle noise as she looked into the dark corner of the room. At first, I thought it was just the wind rustling through the trees outside her window, but then I heard something else. Soft, rhythmic footsteps, as if someone was walking on top of them. With her heart hammering in her chest, Clara looked after her older brother. Lucas listened loudly, but when he saw or looked out of sheer terror into Clara's eyes, he felt a chill chase down his spine. Together, we listened to the approaching footsteps from the hatch that rose downward, growing ever more distinct and inexorable, as if something were moving towards the hatch. Without a second thought, Lucas pulled himself out of the bed and grabbed the flashlight that kept the luggage from the crossbar. He and Clara, with their shaking hands and labored breathing, unwaxed the steps of the staircase that make us cry beneath their bare feet. The one of the steps of the guide, lifting them further into the oppressive hiding place of the House of Shadows. We reach the basement door, which opens with a sharp screech. Lucas's flashlight cut the light, revealing a recessed, scrutinized space where shadows danced across the bare walls. And then, in the most distant corner of the dream, Clara saw something that made her take a breath. A shadowy figure, tall and dressed in black, stopped like a statue, looking at them with eyes that seemed to reflect the hiding place itself. A cry caught in Clara's throat echoed through the emptiness alone, making the mice that all inhabited it hide in dark holes. Lucas, with the courage that only youth can grant, advanced in the figurative direction, demanding to know who or what was there and what they wanted. The shadowy figure remains motionless for a moment that seems like an eternity, then slowly begins to disintegrate like a puff of smoke under the morning sun. Clara grabs Lucas's arm, tremendous pain and relief at the same time. Together, the fire of the hideout dissipates, leaving only the echo of their own hearts pounding in their chests. The countries, awakened by the clamor, will find their children pale and trembling, scorched in the middle of the ground. The air still carries the ancient and mocking scent of the House of Shadows, but the presence of shadows had disappeared as if it had never been there. Since that night, the story of the House of Shadows grows even more in the small town. The children of the neighborhood, inspired by the adventures of Lucas and Clara, begin to explore their own ways and discover the secrets hidden in each dark song of the city. The house, however, remained a mystery, a place where the supernatural intertwined with innocent memories, transforming it into a place of mystery and regret for future generations. Tell me which story made your hair stand on end? Tell me which one you liked the most? Because in the next video the story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories.